In a world where nuclear weapons hold the power to reshape the future of humanity, the threat of a nuclear war between India and Pakistan remains a terrifying possibility. Both countries, each with their own rich histories, cultures, and ambitions, stand at the precipice of a conflict that could send shockwaves through the entire planet. Together, they control over 200 nuclear warheads, and the simple reality is that if a nuclear conflict were to erupt between them, it would not only impact South Asia but could alter the very fabric of global peace, security, and the environment. India and Pakistan have been locked in a bitter rivalry for decades, primarily rooted in territorial disputes over Kashmir. This region, a geographic and cultural flashpoint, has been the site of several wars, military standoffs, and innumerable border skirmishes since both nations gained independence in 1947. But it's not just Kashmir that fuels the flames of tension. Religious, political, and social divisions have further entrenched animosities, and the ever-present question of national identity has made peace difficult to sustain. For decades, the world has witnessed the dangers of this animosity simmering just beneath the surface. While both nations have chosen to avoid direct conflict in recent years, there has always been the looming threat that the situation could explode, triggering an uncontrollable chain of events. As each country bolsters its nuclear capabilities, it has come to a point where the question is not if nuclear weapons would be used, but how much longer the world can wait before it happens. Today, India is believed to have approximately 150 nuclear warheads, while Pakistan has around 160. These figures alone are enough to decimate entire populations. The moment these warheads are deployed, the consequences would not just be a regional catastrophe, they would be a global disaster. If nuclear weapons were used, the immediate loss of life would be staggering. Major cities like New Delhi, Islamabad, Karachi, and Lahore could be reduced to ashes within minutes. The blast would obliterate infrastructure, wipe out entire populations, and leave countless survivors without access to food, shelter, or medical care. The death toll could reach tens of millions, with millions more suffering from the long-term effects of radiation exposure and the breakdown of basic services. But the effects of such a war would go far beyond the immediate aftermath. The environmental impact of nuclear explosions would be catastrophic on a global scale. When nuclear bombs detonate, they release massive amounts of soot, dust, and debris into the atmosphere. This nuclear winter would block sunlight for months, if not years, leading to a dramatic drop in global temperatures. The cooling of the Earth's surface would devastate agricultural systems across the globe, leading to crop failures, food shortages, and famine. What might start as a localized crisis would spiral into a worldwide catastrophe, with the global population facing widespread hunger and malnutrition. The environmental destruction wouldn't end there. The oceans, too, would be affected, as ecosystems critical to marine life would be disrupted by the fallout. Forests and jungles, which act as the lungs of the planet, would burn, releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and further exacerbating climate change. Even nations far removed from the conflict would feel the effects of this global environmental collapse. Rising sea levels, acid rain, and the collapse of ecosystems would affect countries worldwide, irrespective of their involvement in the conflict. Beyond the environmental impact, the geopolitical repercussions of such a war would be profound. Nations around the world would be forced to choose sides, further dividing the global community. Global alliances, long-held treaties, and international relations would unravel, giving rise to new power struggles. The United Nations, already strained in its ability to manage conflict, would find itself overwhelmed by the aftermath of such a conflict. The norms and institutions that have kept global peace intact for decades would be tested like never before. In the face of such a devastating reality, humanity would be forced to reckon with the irreversible damage caused by nuclear weapons. But beyond the physical destruction, the moral and psychological toll on the global community would be incalculable. The world would have to grapple with the reality of a new world order, one where the specter of nuclear war no longer seems like a distant threat but a very real possibility. For generations to come, the trauma of such an event would shape the global psyche. And then there's the issue of human survival. How would the survivors of such a war cope with the aftermath? The humanitarian crisis would be unlike anything seen before. Refugees, displaced by the destruction of their homes and cities, would flood into neighboring countries, overwhelming already fragile infrastructures. The healthcare system would be crippled under the weight of radiation sickness, burns, and other life-threatening injuries. The psychological scars would linger for years, as communities that once lived in peace would find themselves in a permanent state of grief, fear, and loss. In the wake of such a conflict, the global economy would likely collapse. The interconnectedness of modern economies means that no nation would be immune to the fallout from a nuclear war between India and Pakistan. Financial markets would plummet, international trade would grind to a halt, and global supply chains, already fragile due to geopolitical tensions, would disintegrate. Countries that were once prosperous would find themselves unable to feed their people or sustain their economies. With mass unemployment, poverty, and political instability, the world would enter a dark age of uncertainty. As the world watches the unfolding chaos, the role of international diplomacy would become more critical than ever before. Countries must act now to prevent this disaster from becoming a reality. But the path forward is not easy. There are no simple solutions to the India-Pakistan conflict, and the nuclear arms race shows no signs of slowing down. The world can no longer afford to ignore the potential for nuclear conflict in this region. Global leaders must come together, not just to avert war, but to address the root causes of the tensions between these two nations. The stakes could not be higher. A nuclear war between India and Pakistan would not be a regional disaster, it would be a global catastrophe. The long-term effects would be felt around the world, and the world would have to confront the reality that humanity's survival might depend on our ability to solve conflicts without resorting to the unthinkable. The future of global peace rests on the fragile balance of diplomacy, cooperation, and mutual understanding. The time to act is now, before it's too late. What do you think? Is the world on the brink of disaster, or can diplomacy still save us from a nuclear catastrophe? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and join the conversation about how we can secure a peaceful future for generations to come.